Good morning. Good to have a few minutes together today. Thanks so much for joining me, and I appreciate your faithful audience participation. It's a great thing to be saved. I'm going to be in 2 Samuel and 1 Samuel a little bit today. I just wanted to remind you the importance of prayer. I was listening to our pastor, Brother Hiles. He was preaching a message some years ago, and he said of all the responsibilities of a pastor, the most important thing is prayer. And of course, it ripples to every Christian. There's a lot of people who go to church that never read their Bible or pray or take any time to witness. There's some people who go to church and will read their Bible. There's a much smaller group of people who go to church, read their Bible, and they might pass out tracts or knock on some doors. But if the truth were told, and we could see how much time people actually spend talking to God, I would be willing to say, other than perhaps our senior citizens, our older godly people who maybe family's gone, distractions are gone, and they take time to pray. Other than them, I would say that the average church is pretty prayerless. Evangelist Tom Williams, who spends a lot of time with pastors, teaching pastors, and he had the school of prayer. He would take hours and hours teaching on prayer, primarily to pastors. And he said in his estimation, the average pastor doesn't spend 10 minutes a day in prayer. And we need God. Our country needs us to need God. And we do need God, but we need to acknowledge that need and seek God and turn to God. And I encourage you to have prayer lists. I wish I could, and I'm not an example, but for me, I've got in the little corner back storeroom sort of place there, I've got a place I can kneel and a chair a little stool, not a chair, but a little stool. I can't sit in it very long, I'm not very comfortable, and I don't know how many pictures on the wall back there of people through the years, missionaries primarily, some church planners, a few evangelists, but just people I pray for, people that matter. And Paul, if you look at Romans 16, Paul goes to this list of people very precious to him. And then he talks about prayer. And Paul he says to people, pray for us that the word of God may have free course. And pray for us because all men have not the knowledge of God. And Paul believed in prayer. Paul believed that the prayers of the church members, for he as the preacher and the church planter, evangelist, whatever title you want to put on Paul, he thought their prayers were important. And I want to encourage you to pray. Have your prayer cards that are from missionaries. I have prayer lists. Every morning at 6:45, a reminder pops up. There's probably, 15 to 20 names there of people I pray for. They're on my every morning prayer list. And then at 4 p.m, another different prayer list pops up and I might be in the middle of something, I can't stop to even address it. But if I'm free at 4, and that's not the same list every day. That alternates, one list one day, one the next, and it goes back to there are 2 lists on afternoon. And then I've got prayer lists for friends and prayer lists of people in the ministry, and we need to pray. And many of you watching this are on one of those prayer lists, I'm sure. And of course, you got family. I'd encourage you to pray for your family every day. Pray for your parents if they're living. Pray for your children, your grandchildren, siblings, that little window of people around you. Take time and ask God's help and instruction and mercy. We have a great God, and I don't quite understand sovereignty and prayer. And if God has a plan, what does my prayers have to do with it? But I know God was on his way to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, and Abraham interceded, and there was a chance for them to be saved. It didn't happen, but there was a chance. And remember, during the Exodus, God said at one time to Moses, let me alone that my wrath may wax hot. And Moses said, if you kill all these people, God, everybody's going to say you couldn't get us into the promised land. And they're going to say you're not any good of a God. And Moses interceding for the people of Israel. Another time in the wilderness there, the people of Israel always messing up. And God he sent a plague and people were dying. And Moses went to prayer and he sent Joshua with an incense pot. All I know what to call it. I can't remember what they call it in the story. And Aaron goes out, and where the people were dying, he stands there between the living and the dead, and stands there, and that incense is a picture maybe of prayer, whatever. Moses is praying, and though Moses and Aaron interceding save people, and your prayer life matters. Peter was in jail, remember the story, and at John Mark's mother's house there was a gathering of believers praying, and Peter, the angel comes, sets him free. Peter's knocking on the door. Rhoda, the girl, answers the door. She didn't even answer the door. She said, "It's Peter." Runs in, tells everybody, "Hey, Peter's out there." No, he's in jail. No, it's really him. No, it must be his angel. He's probably dead. You wonder if their prayer meeting is what got Peter released. And James had just had his head chopped off in jail. You wonder if there was nobody holding a prayer meeting for James. So if I'm in jail, pray that I get my head chopped off or that I get out. I don't want to just sit there and rot. But Paul spent a lot of time rotting in jail. So prayer, I hope you'll pray. I hope you'll take time to plan your prayer. Take time to organize your petitions to God. And he said, whatsoever things you desire when you pray, believe. So your desire, it's okay to ask what you desire. Now, James says you ask and receive not because you ask amiss that you may consume it upon your lust. Well, so, if you're praying for $1 million in lottery tickets, $100 million, that's probably something you're going to consume in your lust. But to pray for wisdom, to pray for God's healing on someone you love, to pray for God to bless and special days at church, soul winning days, whatever. God to bless the preaching of his word, the Sunday school classes. We've had a continual difficulty getting our rest homes back open and some of the jail services going. Praying that God would open up these doors. Those are people who aren't going to hear the gospel if we don't go in to tell them. And so prayer matters so much. I'm not going to talk about prayer though today. Today I'm going to talk about overreaction. And in 2 Samuel chapter 10, there's a story. And before I get to the story, I think most of you know a little bit about my background, but I grew up in the mountains in Northern California. If you go to Redding, right on the Interstate 5 going up the middle of California, that's a couple of hours from the Oregon border. If you go from Redding straight west toward the ocean, there's some pretty rugged mountains and a couple of bad, windy, make you car sick roads, and you can eventually get to the ocean. It's not a fun drive, but beautiful country, timber and rivers and streams and whitewater rafting on the small scale, not big like some of the big rivers, but a lot of wildlife, a lot of hunting and fishing. And that's where I spent my teen years, up in those mountains. And it was not uncommon at all for to hear somebody's driving, especially at night. The hills are steep and they'll cut a road in. So that means you've got a steep here and a steep here. And many times deer would be coming down and they'd jump down to that flat spot, and then a car would come along and hit them or nearly hit them. And you've got to make a decision. You're driving 30, 40 miles an hour, maybe faster, and on a windy road like this, and a deer jumps out in front of you crossing the road. What do? The natural thing is to swerve. Well, when you're on a narrow road and you're on a hill like this, you either swerve into the cliff or you swerve over the cliff, but there's no good alternative. Yet the deer, even 100-pound deer hitting the front of your car at 30 miles an hour, you've got some serious damage. And many times during my teen years, I remember hearing of people who hit a deer or swerved. And to swerve and go over a cliff was not uncommon. That's overreacting. Here's an event, and hit the brakes. You might be better off just hitting the brakes, skidding your tires, and bumping the deer. One of my friends, again at night, he was driving on that same windy road. It was 63-mile road from where we lived to get to Redding, over two mountains, windy mountain roads, and Redding was the nearest anything really. And but he had a mountain lion jump in front of him on the road, and he said his car, he had no time to stop. He didn't even have time to hit his brakes. And he said the car just hit the hind quarter of that mountain lion and spun him around, and he stopped the car. And I don't know what he was going to do. He going to go give the lion some help, But he got out for whatever reason, just a natural thing, get out and see if it's okay or whatever. It was gone. And big old, he said the mountain lion was big as a car, all the way across the car. It's huge. Of course, it's jumping, and your perception at night is always affected. But it's reaction. Where we were, schools were still doing driver's training. I did my driver's training in the spring or fall. I can't remember, but it was good weather. But some of the kids had driver's training through the high school in winter when there was snow, and the driver's ed teacher take them to the county fairgrounds. This huge parking lot, just open and nothing you could hit. And they said that there were times when there was snow on the ground he'd take him there and say, get going about 20, 30 miles an hour road. And he'd say, now turn, across the parking lot, just nothing there. And he'd get him to turn. And then he had a brake on his side. He didn't have a steering wheel, but he had a brake. And he'd hit that brake and send him into a little bit of a spin and teach him how to steer into your spin and how to not overreact. You can panic and you could hit on the brakes and go spinning even worse, throw yourself into a worse spin. Well, overreaction is so much the case. Athletics are that way. Many times, somebody's in basketball, because that's what I played. I can tell you better than football, but people picking on you, pushing, and then you finally get so frustrated, you turn around and throw an elbow or throw a fist, and you get in trouble. The little things aren't being seen. It's the overreaction. I mean, we had, I don't know how often this happened, but some of our guys, a lot of the boys chewed tobacco. And when they needed 2 yards for a first down or whatever, they said they'd have somebody on the line, the offensive line, chewing tobacco, and their hands are here, and the other guys are they're lined up ready to the ball to be snapped, and then somebody go and shoot a big old mouthful of slobbery, slimy chew on somebody's hand, and the guy would pull his hand back and then get their 5-yard penalty, and that's a reaction. That's not an overreaction. Somebody spits chewing tobacco on me, it's disgusting. But anyway, overreaction. In 2 Samuel 10, there's a guy named Hanan, and he was the son of King Nahash, and he died, and the dad died, and the son was suddenly in the throne. And in 2 Kings 10:2, and David said, I will show kindness to Hanan, the son of Nahash, as his father shown kindness to me. And David sent to comfort him by the hand of his servants for his father. And David's servants came to the land of the children of Ammon. Now, just pure good motives. This guy that died had been good to David, and David wanted to be good to his son when the man died. As simple as that. And I don't know what he did. The Bible doesn't say what he did to comfort, but he sent some people. They could have been bringing gifts or money, or just a handful of people of noble position, just to say, hey, David just wanted you to know he cares, and he's sorry about the loss of your father. No idea what was done, but he did something. Well, as honorable and sincere as David was, we need to understand we're all influenced by the people around us. Now, we're influenced by the circumstances, we're influenced by the people, and then we're influenced by our own heart and our own perceptions. So picture this. He just lost his father. We don't know, is he prepared to be king? Does he even want to be king? Is he totally out of his area? Is he thinking this is stupid? What in the world am I doing being king? We have no idea. He might have been salivating wanting this position. But we know this. In his heart, he just lost his dad. And so that's an emotional situation. And all the ripples, are people going to follow me? Am I going to have a military overthrow going on? Am I going to have to fight to keep the throne in the family? Whatever it might be. There's a lot of internal pressures on Hanan. And then there is the circumstance of he's on the throne and all these decisions and all this that he's got to do, in addition to grieving over the loss of his father and a burial, and I'm assuming a mother, caring for a grieving mother, and all those things. And then there are people. And there's so many times bad counselors get people in trouble. I think I'd like to write a little pamphlet sometime on bad counselors. There's a bunch of them in the Bible, and in 40 years of pastoring, there's a bunch of bad counsel that has hurt the people of God. I mean, good people, because they listened to the wrong person, they made the wrong decision, or they overreacted, and suddenly grief and all kinds of mess. Now, the people who are the bad counselors, it's like Amnon, who got in trouble with the decision he made. Amnon had a friend who gave him some ideas. A long story, I won't go into it, but Amnon ended up dying. But the friend didn't. You read many chapters later, the friend is still in the cabinet of the king's cabinet as a counselor, and working for David. Well, he's the one who's the problem. And so in verse 3, you see the bad counselors, the princes of the children of Ammon, said unto Hanan their lord, thinkest thou that David doth honor thy father, and that he hath sent comforters to thee? Hath not David rather sent his servants to thee to search the city and to spy it out and to overthrow it? Now, that's bad counsel. This guy was acting like he knew what was in someone's heart. And by the way, you don't know what's in anyone's heart. I'm amazed the number of times I've heard someone say, well, how could they not know? Or how could they not have been aware? How could they have done this and not felt? You see, We think if I did what that guy did, I know it would be inside me that would cause me to do those things. But the fact is, I'm not inside you. I don't know what's inside your heart. And it's not only sinful and wrong for me to gossip or slander you or accuse you, falsely accuse you, when I have no idea what's in your heart. It's dangerous. So these counselors, they said, oh, David, he didn't care about you or your dad. He's coming. He's going to take over the land. He's just checking out what's here, how stable or how much turmoil is there. In verse 4, wherefore Hanan, so he did it. It was his fault. He had the wrong counselor. Then he acted. Hanan took David's servants, shaved off half their beard, and cut off their garments in the middle, even to their buttocks, and sent them away. Oh, and the mess that happened. A war followed. I won't go into all that, but a war followed. Thousands of people were killed. A horrible, horrible disaster, all because Hanan overreacted. He overreacted. And that's not uncommon. Something comes up and we overreact. We think we know what's going on. We don't have all the facts. We don't know what the intent was. A lot of times we don't even know what happened, and we overreact to things, and the mess that we make in overreact. We need to be very careful to reserve judgment. I'll get to that in the end. If you want to look sometime at 1 Samuel 18:8, God said, let's look at that, 1 Samuel 18. God said to, the story in 1 Samuel 18. This is the transition of the throne from Solomon. 1 Samuel 18:8. And Saul was very wroth. That's the next one. That's in 1 Kings. Saul was very wroth, saying displeased him. David had just killed Goliath. And David's walking back to Jerusalem, swinging this giant's head in his hands. And the girls say Saul has slain his thousands and David his 10,000s. And so they're giving David a bunch of credit. But understand this, David wasn't trying to get the throne, but Saul overreacted because what the ladies said, because every man is stupid when women get involved. And the girls are chanting and singing, Saul has slain his thousands and David his 10,000. But Saul, that festering, that jealousy, that envy, it got in there, and Saul's heart turned, and now pretty soon he's throwing a javelin at David, his most loyal and valiant soldier. Why? Overreaction. And then the other one I was going to mention, and it's a good thing we looked there to get him in the right place. 1 Kings chapter 12, Samuel and then Kings. We've got a transition going on. 1 Kings chapter 12, and down at verse 26, Solomon dies, and Solomon's son is Rehoboam, and he ends up being the king in the southern area of Judah. Jeroboam is a servant. He ends up ruling the northern 10 tribes, and so the kingdom splits under Rehoboam, Solomon's son. And God, if you read back earlier, you'll see God told Jeroboam, I'll let you reign according to your own desires, whatever you want. I'll give you this, and this, and I'll make a great kingdom. And he said, just relax, follow me. Now, these are all Jewish people. They all know the laws. They all know the feast days they're to keep, and they all know this stuff. But suddenly a servant is elevated to royalty, and he's given half of the nation of Israel. And here he is, but he sees the king's son in the south. That's where Jerusalem is. Jerusalem's where the temple, Solomon's temple is. And Jeroboam's up north. He said, we don't even have a temple. And the people are going to start going to the worship down in Jerusalem, and they're going to forsake me. They're going to kill me. And Jeroboam makes a couple of golden calves. He sets up the lowest form of people as priests, and he sets up a couple of places to worship, trying to save the kingdom that God said, I'll give you the kingdom. Jeroboam, he should have relaxed. 1 Kings chapter 18, verse 26. And Jeroboam said in his heart, that's a problem. This heart's a problem. Now shall the kingdom return to the house of David. Jeroboam trusted his heart more than his God, more than the word of God. Now we have the written word of God, but Jeroboam heard from God first person, actually through the prophet. But Jeroboam heard it, and he trusted his own heart instead of the words that came from the preacher. And he'd have been better off. Verse 28, wherefore the king took counsel and made 2 calves of gold, and said unto them, it is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Behold thy gods. Now, it would be good if this was only a Bible issue, but the fact is it's not a Bible issue. And this overreaction, this over response. When I was in college, I heard about a college guy. Of course, most of us were working nights, going to school days, no time at all. And if you're married, it's hard. And this guy was frustrated. His wife's sitting home watching TV. Well, he's never home, and she's there all the time. And he kept telling her, shut the TV off. I don't know what he was telling. That's the impression we got. But anyway, one night he comes home from work, and his wife's watching whatever soap operas. I have no idea what she's watching. But he just came in and put his foot through the TV. He said, I'm so mad at this TV, and put his foot through it. Well, he almost ended up getting a divorce, overreaction. And we need to be so careful. Now, this can be, I've seen preachers resign from positions as pastor or staff members. I've seen them just like that. Something goes wrong, and they just, I'm done, I'm gone. And they leave, and they should never have left. In one case, of course, hindsight's always 20/20, but I'm watching the situation, another state, another church, and I see somebody who, because of something they didn't feel was handled right in the way of decision making for leadership and staff jobs and who got what jobs, whatever it was. I don't know all the details. On the outside, I try to not know any gossip, but this guy said, I'm done. He walked out, left. And within a year, the circumstances were so turned around where this guy would have had this and this position and so many wonderful things. But he I think, and it's just me, and I've never talked to him or the pastor or the staff in the church, none of my business. But in my heart, I'm thinking he overreacted. I think God had a wonderful plan, and the plan took him through an awkward moment, but he had a great ending. Overreact. I've seen married people do amazing things, crazy things. Your spouse did whatever. Your spouse watched pornography, or your spouse mishandled money, or whatever, was unfaithful, or whatever it might be. One of the finest churches I know, with one of the finest pastors I know, his wife had been unfaithful to him. And he had to step back and ask himself, got all these little kids, and my church is growing, and I'm busy, and my wife's lonesome, and she ends up getting through somebody she meets somewhere, and some little brief flirting with wrong, whatever it was. But you know what? He was so careful, and he was so deliberate, and he was so slow to act. Saved their marriage, saved their kids. Their kids are serving God. Church is an exceptional, amazing church. But he was very careful how he acted, how he responded to things. Fist fights have begun because somebody said something, did something. I know a story way back in the early days of our church. Somebody was walking in a parking lot. Somebody, and these are kids, 18, 19-year-old young people. And this guy made some obscene comment or gesture to the other guy. And he could have just kept walking, but he, tough young punks. And he comes over and hits the guy. Well, you might be able to get away with hitting the guy. The problem is he was off balance. The guy falls over, and this is the day when car bumpers were of steel. He falls back, hits his head on a bumper of steel, those big chrome bumpers the old cars had, and seriously wounded him, injured him. And he's in the hospital. This guy, he goes to jail for years for assault, for attempted murder, I don't know, whatever it was. But you know how they charge up things. You know what? Overreaction. Now, I think I'm going to do a part 2 on this, so you'll hear the rest of it. But here's a couple of thoughts. First of all, try to not act immediately. Now, there are some things, of course, that act immediately. You have to act immediately. I see somebody crawling in the neighbor's window, and they've got a ski mask on, and I know the neighbors are gone. I need to call the police immediately. There are those things, but for a lot of things, don't respond. If it wouldn't hurt anything to wait, then wait. Most things that we deal with, we can deal with tomorrow. And I don't mean procrastination. I mean, wait till your emotions get settled down. Wait until you maybe find out the rest of the information. Might not have hurt at all for Hanan to find out what David was thinking. Talk to those visitors. Boy, there's some tragedies. So number one, unless it's necessary, legally or safety wise, if someone's breaking into my house and we're all upstairs and I hear people coming in downstairs tearing the place up, I have to act. I have to do something right then. I can't say, hey, could you guys just hang on for maybe till tomorrow so I can think through how to. You can't do that. There are times you have to act and you have to respond, but many times we could hold off. Don't act immediately. Secondly, try not to think the worst. boy, some of us, we are just prone to believe and hear, and we just think you can get angry later. You can get mad later on. Besides, if you're going to be angry, you ought to have it planned and carefully orchestrated anyway. Uh, Ephesians says, "Be angry and sin not. Let not the sun go down on your wrath." So if you're going to be angry, have it planned and premeditated and organize it, and don't fly off the handle. Be very careful. It is possible that our courts at least are supposed to assume you're innocent until proven guilty. You know that, right? Now, social media doesn't do that. All you have to do is hear something and you believe it and you tell everybody else about it. And by the way, that's gossip and that's slander. And I believe you'll give an account because Jesus said that you'll give an account for every idle word. And I think social media is gonna be the avenue that a lot of people, I don't understand all this give account thing, but Jesus said it, so something's gonna happen. But I'm supposed to assume you're innocent until you're proven guilty. And again, there may be circumstances where I've got to say something, do something, whatever. But for somebody was mean to their friend in school, or some kid says something about some other kid or whatever, I'm going to take it mighty slow. I'm going to assume innocence. Why? Because that's the right way to do things. Now, you may get in trouble in this culture that we're in for not jumping on the kill 'em bandwagon. But I'm just going to choose this book over the nonsense of this culture. We're in a stupid culture. We're in a godless culture. And this idea that our founders put into our courts that you're innocent until proven guilty. And well, there's a lot of guilty people on the streets. Yeah, well, there's a lot of innocent people who sat in jail too. And innocent until proven guilty. And that is huge. And I want to challenge you, practice it. When you hear things, when people say things, don't you react. No, don't do that kind of thing. And so, number one, don't act immediately. Number two, don't think the worst. Try to assume innocence. And number three, give people the benefit of the doubt. Give them the benefit of the doubt. Somebody goes flying by me on the road. Yeah, idiot. Yeah, you hope the cop gets you. You're going to see you splattered against the highway up there in the next bridge that we cross under. Whatever. What if they got a call from work and their house is on fire? What if their wife's in the back seat having a baby? Man, we don't know all the story. We don't know everything. And give people the benefit of the doubt. Now, you may turn out to be wrong, and that you gave people the benefit of the doubt they didn't deserve. You may have believed in innocence and find out later they were guilty. But you know what? Some of you that are old, remember the O.J. Simpson trial? What did we know? But most of America believed O.J. Simpson was guilty. And the fact is, I don't know anything except what the news media put out. And I happen to believe with all my heart that the news media is a bunch of liars who are selling news space, and an ad for washing machines is no less propaganda than the news they're printing about politics and courts and anything else. They're not trying to print the truth. They're trying to get you to buy magazines. I heard an interesting statement when Manny Pacquiao first came. I like Manny Pacquiao, and I've watched the compilations where they put lots of short bits of his fights together. And one of his first fights in America, the promoter, the announcer, whoever the guy was, I'm not very smart with that stuff, but he said, this kid from the Philippines, he's gonna put seats or put bodies in the seats or something like that. What he meant is he's gonna fill the stadiums. He's gonna fill the arenas where the boxing. And the big thing, it had nothing to do with whether Manny Pacquiao was good or bad, or of course he was good. But the issue was, how many seats can we fill? That was the issue. That was first on this man's mind. Not Manny Pacquiao's character, not his faith. He's a Bible-reading Christian. They weren't concerned, and I don't know when he got saved. He might not have been saved early in his career. I have no idea. But some of our friends in the Philippines that are preachers, they know him. They've had dinner with him and talked with him. He's a very gracious Christian man. But what's the motive? See, the motive is what determines what they say. And so be very, very careful. James 1:19 says this. Wherefore, my brethren, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. Now that could get you in trouble in our culture, because everybody wants you to react and act right now. How come you're not doing anything? And, well, you know what? I'm going to do what God said. I'm going to be swift to hear. I'm going to be slow to speak, and I'm going to be slow to wrath. And that will keep you out of a lot of trouble, and it might get you in trouble with the world around you. But you know what? Just do right and trust this book and trust God. Everything's going to be fine. This world's not our home anyway. We're going to leave anytime and let the critics have it. Hope you have a great day. Thanks for spending some time together today.